All right, let's have more fun with solving. Yay, it does say record. All right. If the absolute value of x is equal to a, so when we're talking about equations, and here's what we know, then x is equal to a or x equals negative a. And we need to make sure we understand the following, that this is provided that a is a positive number. As we just saw in the last video, if the absolute value equals a negative, then that's going to be no solution. Now, one of the key things we have when we're trying to solve absolute value equations is that first, and this is not the only time that you see instructions that are like this, you have to isolate the absolute value first. Because as you see here in this if-then statement, I have the absolute value by itself. That's what you need to do so that we can solve these guys. Okay, so let me give you an example here. If I want to solve the absolute value of x plus 7 is equal to 5. Think about what the statement at the top of the page means and how it applies to this equation. How many answers do I expect to get out of this? I expect to get 2. Now let's see how I can get those 2 solutions. What would you do? When I isolate the x, because we can't, here's the thing. Isolate the absolute value. That means get the absolute value on one side of the equation completely by itself. And that's what I have here. This plus 7 is inside the absolute value. It's inside a grouping symbol, and that grouping symbol has an operation with it. So what you cannot do is you cannot move the 7 over, because right now it's inside of the absolute value. But what you can do is that you can take right, we expect this absolute value to equal 5. So what that means is that the inside part of this will either equal 5 or the inside stuff is going to equal what? It's going to equal negative 5. So now I have 2 small equations and I know you know how to solve them. How do you solve the first one? You guys are being recorded, just so you know this. Move the 7 to the other side, you get negative 2, or x equals what? Or x equals negative 12. Do you agree? All right. Now, how do you know these guys are correct? Plug them in. If you plug in negative 2, what's negative 2 plus 7?
5.
And the absolute value of 5 is 5. What if I plug in negative 12? Negative 12 plus 7 is negative 5, but the absolute value of negative 5 is 5. So it's very easy to check to see that both of these guys are correct. Well, it looks like this is going to be fun stuff to have on the test, right? I'm excited to grade that. Because you know how much I love to grade stuff, right? Uh-huh, yeah. Especially if it's a problem that has fractions in it. Oh, happy day. Have the absolute value of 3x minus 1 plus 6 is equal to 17. What would you do? I mean, after you're done yawning, of course. I don't want to break that up.
What are the answers?
Say again?
What are the answers?
How did you get that?
The 4 and the x.
Oh, you just picked 4 out of thin air.
I went backwards.
What do you mean you went back? Did you start with the answer?
Started at 17
Uh-huh.
minus 6.
Oh, so it tells me the first thing you're doing is moving the 6 over so that you can do what? Isolate the absolute value. Huh? Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that means the absolute value of 3x minus 1 is equal to what? This equals 11. Now here's the thing. If the absolute value is equal to a constant, this guy is positive, so we're on the right track, then I'm going to separate and have how many equations? I'm going to have 2 equations. What's the first one? The one that you were talking about, Zach?
4.
Yeah, how did you get the 4, though?
3 times 4 is 12 minus 1.
Okay, you're killing me, Smalls. You solved this guy, right?
So,
So it's great that you can just figure it out in your head, but you need to be able to show the work for that. So we know the inside here has to equal 11, or the inside here has to equal what? Has to equal the opposite of that, which is negative 11. So here, when you move the 1 over, you have 3x is equal to 12, and then x is equal to 4. And Zach has already plugged that in and verified that when I plug in 4, it's 12 minus 1 is 11. The absolute value of 11 is 11, plus 6 is 17. What about over here? I get 3x equals what? Negative 10, which means x equals how much? I get negative 10 thirds. And we should be able to plug that in up here. If you plug that in here next to the 3, you get negative 10. Negative 10 minus 1 is negative 11. But what's the absolute value of negative 11? Positive 11 plus 6 equals 17. So we can see that these are our 2 answers. Any questions about those?